Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
Travis Hunter is one of the most intriguing and interesting draft prospects of all time. Don't confuse that with best, but he's certainly a really, really good prospect, and he's really, really interesting in a way that we're not used to prospects being interesting. And with Travis Hunter, it's really tested a lot of, what would I call it, bins that scouts use to put players in, like scouts are used to putting players in boxes and saying that this player is this type of player and this is what you do with that type of player. With Travis, is much different. There is no box to put Travis Hunter in. He is a unique prospect, a unique talent, a unique projection into the NFL. I could see Travis Hunter easily being a really, 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 really good defensive back in the NFL. I could see Travis Hunter being a really, 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 really good wide receiver in the NFL. I could see Travis Hunter doing some version of both and being the best player we've ever seen do that both sides, both two position thing in the NFL. There's a lot that Travis brings to the table, and a lot of the projection is wondering just how high and how far he can go with it. But when I read stuff about Travis, when I hear scouts talk about Travis, and some of them are arguing about what box Travis Hunter should be placed in, should he commit to one position? Sometimes they'll go, oh, well, you'll use him on packages and offense or something like that. And it just screams to me, when it comes to Travis, there is a overall lack of creativity and boldness when it comes to Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter is not just a guy who played a little bit on both sides of the ball. Travis Hunter is a guy who dominated on both sides of the football at a Power 4 level in Colorado. We're looking at a guy who had 1,258 receiving yards and 15 touchdowns. He had 11 pass deflections, a forced fumble, and 4 interceptions. Travis Hunter won the Heisman Trophy Award, the Walter Camp Award, which is the de facto Offensive Player of the Year award. He won the College Defensive Player of the Year award. He won Wide Receiver of the Year, and he was considered an All-American on both sides of the ball. This is not a prospect that you try to fit in any kind of box that we have seen before. This is a wholly unique thing with Travis. And to Travis's credit, people have said since he was coming out of high school that he couldn't do both sides. Goes to Jackson State, people look at him do both sides of Jackson State, but that's the FCS, right? Not really big boy college football. No disrespect to the SWAC or the MEAC, right? But, it's not FC, it's not FBS, it's not Power 5 at that time, Power 4 now, football. Well, he makes the jump to Power 5 football, Power 4 the last 2 years, Pac-12, Big 12. Remember, the Pac-12 was really, really strong when he joined it. And he was able to successfully be a two-way player in the Pac-12 and in the Big 12. And not just successfully be able to be a two-way player, but the most successful two-way player we've ever seen. When you bring up two-way players, there are names that come up, right? People go, well, this guy was a two-way player in college. Look, he didn't do it that well in the NFL, And these are impressive names that people do bring up, but I think we need to understand the scope of which these guys were two-play players in college versus what it is that Travis Hunter is doing. Like Chris Gamble, right? He was a big two-way player. He was a very useful two-way player for, I believe, a national championship team for Ohio State. If you're an Ohio State fan of a certain age, you know who Chris Gamble is. In his college career, the entire college career, we're talking about 3 years of football, 38 games, Chris Gamble had about 645 yards of rushing and receiving yards combined, 1 touchdown. That's what Chris Gamble did in, again, his whole college football career. Charles Woodson, 3 seasons, 34 games at Michigan. This is one of the best two-way players of all time. When Travis Hunter was doing what he did, he got compared to Charles Woodson, right? But look at the offensive production for Charles Woodson. 3 years at Michigan, 537 combined rushing and receiving yards with 5 touchdowns. Miles Jack, two-way player, beast at UCLA, linebacker, running back, 3 seasons, 29 games. Got 395 rushing and receiving yards combined, 11 touchdowns. Jabril Peppers, 3 seasons at Michigan, 27 games. When he was doing what he was doing at Michigan, we were all thinking about Charles Woodson. 321 combined receiving and rushing yards, 5 touchdowns at Michigan. 3 seasons, 27 games. Travis Hunter, in just 22 games, in 2 seasons of college football, 1,984 yards and 21 touchdowns on offense. If you add up all of Travis Hunter's rushing and receiving yards, combine them, and then compare them to all the other famous two-way players we named, Chris Gamble, Charles Woodson, Miles Jack, Jabril Peppers, those 4 players combined for 1,907 yards. Travis Hunter, in 22 games, mind you, all of these guys were 3-year players in college. Travis Hunter, only 2 years at an FBS level, outgained those guys by almost 80 yards. This is not a two-way player we've ever seen before. This is not somebody who dabbles in offense or dabbles in defense. This is somebody who has a full top 5 pick resume as both a defensive back and a wide receiver. He is the most talented wide receiver, I believe, in this draft class. We could argue about if Ted McMillan or somebody else, Luther Burden or Emeka Egbuka, is more refined than Travis. But if we're just going on raw talent, there's nobody in this class that is as explosive as Travis Hunter is off the ball. There's nobody in this class who can contort their body and have the body control that Travis Hunter has demonstrated. And there's nobody in this draft class that has the 50-50 ball ability that Travis Hunter has. All the things you can't coach at wide receiver, Travis Hunter does better than every other wide receiver in this draft class. He has the best hands. He has the best body contortion. He has the best body control. He has the best flexibility. He has the best 50-50 ball ability, and he has the best athletic burst. Maybe Emeka Egbuka touches him a little bit, but I think Travis is a little bit more athletic than Emeka. Now, you can argue Emeka runs better routes. All the skill stuff at wide receiver, Travis isn't there. He's not far behind, but he's not Amari Cooper coming out of Alabama. He's not like route runner with the capital R. But all the stuff you can't coach at the wide receiver position, Travis is way better than the rest of the class at. However that makes you project him is however that makes you project him. Same thing happens on the defensive side of the ball. All the stuff you can't coach at defensive back, Travis Hunter, so much better than everybody else, right? We could argue that Will Johnson has better technique and better hand placement. He's better in man-to-man situations because of that technique, hand placement. But Travis Hunter has better instincts for the ball. He has the best zone instincts that a lot of people have seen in a corner in a while. And he is a playmaker on the defensive side of the ball in a way that a lot of corners aren't. He would be a top 5 pick as a defensive back alone. If he'd spent all of his time at defensive back, he would be better, more polished than Will Johnson, and he would obviously be the number 1 defensive back taken. And I think if he spent the last 3 years, 4 years dedicated to wide receiver, he would be clearly the number 1 wide receiver in this draft class. Because keep in mind, Travis Hunter has dominated. He was 5th in the country at wide receiver, and you can tell that he is the most raw of the 2 positions at wide receiver, which begs the question, hey, what happens when you actually give this kid some time to develop at wide receiver? I think that's why the Browns are so interested in Travis as a wide receiver, because as a defensive back, he's been pushed to play in the secondary pretty much his whole career, right? All his life, people have pushed Travis to play in the secondary. He's gotten coaching from Deion Sanders to play in the secondary. He is as polished as he could be, or not as polished as he could be. He's pretty polished on the secondary side of it, right? As a defensive back, he's probably more polished on that defensive side than he is on the offensive side. But if he's more raw on the offensive side, he has these things you can't teach on the offensive side, and he's still being able to produce at such a high level in Power 4 football. You might ask yourself the question, hey, what happens when we do teach this kid how to run a little bit better routes? When we do actually develop him on the offensive side of the ball? What happens? What does he become? He's already the most talented, and you can argue right now out the box the best wide receiver in his draft class. Could this, just training him, turn him into one of the better wide receivers in the NFL, an all-pro caliber wide receiver? I think that part of looking at Travis's game, very underrated. Not enough people have looked at it, right? Considered, hey, what happens if you just focus on wide receiver with this guy? He's so good already. What could he be if you dedicated more time? And again, the stuff that you can't teach, he's got it, right? This ain't Kadarius Toney. You're trying to teach him to play wide receiver he can't catch. No, Travis Hunter has the best hands in the class, the best body control in the class. I could see the raw clay on offense being able to be built into something spectacular, maybe more than people are seeing right now. Time people talk about Travis Hunter, they will bring up that he's a unicorn, but then spend the next 5 minutes telling you why they're going to unscrew the horn off the unicorn, right? They want to turn the unicorn into a pony. Why? Because they know how to ride ponies. They don't know what to do with the unicorn. But that's not the unicorn's problem, right? If you don't know how to use somebody who is a unicorn in the way that Travis Hunter is going to be in the NFL, or could be in the NFL, you shouldn't want to make him lesser just so you understand it a little bit better, right? If the Browns want to draft Travis Hunter, or if any team wants to draft Travis Hunter, you got to be willing to let the unicorn be a unicorn. Not saying he can't be a fantastic wide receiver if he only plays one position. Not saying he can't be a fantastic defensive back if he only plays one position. But there is that intrigue of letting him play on both sides. And I don't think it's crazy to think that Travis Hunter in the NFL could play on both sides. Let's use Ladd McConkey as an example for this one, right? He had about 1,100 yards last year for the Chargers. He played about 803 snaps. Now, 230 of those snaps were run blocking. So he was able to get about 1,100 yards as a wide receiver off of about 573 receiving snaps. So if you were careful about when you played him, and you would have to play him on some rundowns just to not be super predictable, but let's say you play him on like 100 rundowns, right? If you play him about 673 snaps on offense, that is enough to get this guy about 110 targets on offense, and that's well enough to get to about 1,000 yards or more of production on the wide receiver side of the ball, and that's only 673 snaps, right? And you have all the rest of the snaps to play with, whether you want to use him more as a wide receiver or use him more as a defensive back. So when you break down how players get the snaps, what players are actually doing when they get snaps, and this is where the Browns having DePodesta in that front office, and this is where the Browns having DePodesta in that front office, having the Ivy League degrees and everything else in that front office, I think will be beneficial for them, because they can really take a look at all of these snaps and ask themselves, when is it most efficient to have Travis Hunter on the field? What down and distances, what parts of the field should Travis Hunter be on the field? This is all going to be part of snap management, right? And if you draft Travis Hunter, you're not just going to throw him out on offense randomly, throw him out on defense. You got to have a snap management plan. The Browns have the infrastructure to implement a snap management plan because they already do this with a bunch of different players on their roster. The only difference here is that you'll be sharing a player on both sides of the ball versus just having a player in one side of the ball in specific spots. But it's not a foreign concept, right? Maybe if you want to limit Travis's offensive snaps, play him more on defense, you look at Travis Hunter as a third down option, a guy you bring in when you want to be in empty or 11P in special situations, right? Or a guy that you get the ball to in the red zone. And you play them in very specific spots on the field. Maybe Travis doesn't really enter the field until you get to opponent territory. Maybe you want to throw him on the field on certain parts of the maybe Travis gets to be on the field exclusively on certain hashes in certain yard situations. You would have to do a lot of work and figure out where specifically is the most efficient way to use this dude. But you give him about 600, 700 snaps of offense. If he's the player that they think he can be at number 2, you can get 1,000 yards out of 700 snaps of offense from a wide receiver. And it's not really going to be that difficult to figure out. Again, Ladd McConkey, the example we just used, over 1,000 yards, 1,100 yards on 573 snaps. We would all be extremely happy if Travis Hunter was a consistent 1,100-yard guy. So the idea that he can get that amount of production, it's not going to take a ton of snaps, is there. We can look at somebody like Jerry Jeudy, who has 1,000 snaps of offense at wide receiver. But remember, a lot of the time, Jerry Jeudy is there to block because you need to have a wide receiver out there somewhere. So a lot of those snaps that Jerry Jeudy takes, a good amount of those aren't receiving snaps. And because you do have Jerry Jeudy, who can hold down the number 1 receiver responsibility, you're not just relying the whole offense behind somebody like Travis Hunter. You don't have to have Travis out there playing 1,000 snaps on offense, blocking and being a decoy and all of that, because you have the ability to use him in and out on both sides of the ball because your personnel is unique enough to where you have that flexibility. So cardio-wise, snap count-wise, I think there's a way you can fit that in. As far as if Travis Hunter can physically hold up to the physical expectations of playing both sides, that'd be difficult to manage, right? You would definitely have to do some trial and error there. I understand the pace is slower in the NFL, so you're going to play less snaps total in an NFL game. But remember, the athletes are way bigger, way faster in the NFL, which means it probably takes more energy per snap to defend in the NFL than it does in college football. There's a difference between trying to get in press coverage on a grown-ass man to, getting press coverage on a 17-year-old, right? There's a different amount of energy that gets exposed. There's a different amount of energy between covering somebody who has 4.3 speed versus somebody who has 4.6 speed in college, right? Those things are different and gonna weigh on his stamina, and you got to see how he handles it. But to Travis's credit, he seems to be a unicorn in his ability to have his energy last throughout the game. This dude never gets tired. He has amazing cardio, and it seems like a natural gift of his. Like it's twitchy as he is, he does not get gassed easily, and I think that's amazing. So cardio-wise, I think you can make that work. Let's give that a check. Injury risk and effect, right? These are two different things. Travis Hunter playing both sides of the ball, how much is that going to raise his risk of injury? And Travis Hunter, if he gets injured, the effect that could have on your team because he has a role on both sides of the football. Let's address that first part, right? This is the big counterpoint I've seen whenever you bring up Travis could be a key player on both sides of the ball. People bring up, but yeah, if he's a key player on both sides of the ball and he gets injured, it's going to hurt you twice as much. I don't really think that argument cooks the way that people say it want it to cook, to be honest with you, because of course, if a player is really good for you and they get injured, it's going to hurt, right? Like when Myles Garrett is not on the field, that really sucks for the Cleveland Browns. But we don't advocate that the Browns not have players like Myles Garrett because we're afraid if they're going to get injured and it hurts the team, right? The same principle applies for Travis Hunter being a two-way player. Would Travis Hunter being a two-way player be tremendously beneficial to your football team? Absolutely. Would Travis Hunter, if he's a successful two-way player in the NFL, getting hurt, definitely change your game plan a lot? Yes. But if Travis Hunter is the player that you think he is, a number 2 overall pick quality player, then if he's good at one side of the ball or not, or if he does both sides of the ball or not, he's going to be a player that is good enough to impact your game plan, whether he's there or not, regardless. So I don't get how the two-way thing makes it doubly worse for some people. I understand the argument they're trying to make. I just don't think it cooks. Because you're saying you don't want to draft a player who could be an impact guy on both sides of the ball because you're afraid that he might miss a game, and that might be pretty inconvenient. What are we doing? That's kind of crazy, right? Now, as far as injury risk goes, he has had some injuries, right? He missed a lot of games, 3 games, I believe, his first year in the Pac-12 with a lacerated spleen. It was on a late hit versus Colorado State, very famous moment. And that took him out. He's also had some slight injuries where he's missed like a quarter here or a half there, dealing with his shoulder. Nothing chronic has popped up with him. He's not had like a major injury where it requires surgery outside of like obviously the puncture situation that happened with him at Colorado. Nothing that we would normally deem as athletically limiting in his injury profile or athletically concerning. So I think injury-wise, he's fine. The big note, though, is all of his injuries in college have happened on the offensive side of the ball. And I do think that tells you something. If you play him on the offensive side of the ball, that's going to be the side that risk him more to injury. But if your plan is to play him primarily on the offensive side of the ball, which it does seem like the Browns' plan is, then I don't think the defensive snaps are going to add that high of a risk of injury because he's not the kind of player that I think would have a high injury risk as a defensive back, given like his body control is just so phenomenal that like guys like that tend to be able to stay away from the more collision-based injuries that you could get on the defensive side. So I don't really worry too much about injuries. This was something that concerned me at the beginning of the process, but the more and more I looked at it, the less and less concerned I got about the injury stuff with him. And I think the biggest question when it comes to if Travis Hunter can play both sides is the mental workload of playing 2 sides of a NFL on an NFL team, right? Being a full-time defensive player or a part-time defensive player and a full or part-time offensive player. The amounts of game planning, strategy, the amount of meetings that you have to work to get Travis there. Is that doable? It's a big question. It's a big question. In Colorado, they found a way to figure it out with him. And I think that is worth pointing out, right? Because football is not as complicated in college game, but they do a lot of unnecessary meetings and shit at the college level. So you could say it's more bloated schedule-wise in college than it would be in the NFL, where you have NFLPA rules, guidelines to make sure that you can't over-practice players. But that could work on the flip side, right? In college, you got all the time, all the control in the world to make sure that Travis has meetings with everybody. In NFL, it's built off a model that does not really think about guys playing 2 positions. So you might not have the extra time in the building to give to Travis Hunter to have him learn both sides of football. I hope that makes sense for y'all, right? College, you can have meetings last extra long and go super long, or practice last extra long or go super long to account for extra time you need for Travis. In the NFL, these practice times are set. These practice times are non-negotiable, and they've already been bargained for by the NFLPA. So you got to work within that framework in the NFL. So I think that's the biggest question with him playing both sides, to be honest with you, right? Does an NFL team have the time in the limited amount of time they get to work with players, to work with Travis Hunter on both sides of the ball? And does Travis Hunter have it in him to do the extra work that's going to be necessary to play both sides of the ball? I think yes, right? Part of this is situational to Cleveland. Another part of this is just looking at what Travis already did, right? He already handled the workload at Colorado. It's not going to be the same, but he had NFL coaches at Colorado, right? Pat Shurmur, former NFL guy. I believe their defensive coordinator has some kind of NFL ties. I think it was like a position coach somewhere. Yeah, their defensive coordinator was the former safeties coach for the Cincinnati Bengals. So he went through NFL style meetings in college with Pat Shurmur and Robert Livingston, his defensive coordinator at Colorado. So I don't think he's going to walk into anything that's foreign and that he's not able to handle. Is this going to take some creative thinking from the Cleveland Browns coaching staff to be able to figure out how to get the work in? Yes. But is it possible? I think so. I don't think it's impossible. And keep in mind, like, Travis Hunter is going to graduate from college before the draft. I believe he aims to graduate with a degree in anthropology. Didn't just have like one of those BS general studies majors that like some athletes have where you could tell they never did any work in college. He definitely had a course load at Colorado. He completed that course load, did all of that work while also being able to do the work of learning both sides of the football at college level. So without the coursework, without worrying about getting a degree, I think Travis is going to be fine. And then I think it begs the question, and this is the question I don't think we ask enough. Is football too specialized? I've always wondered this as a football nerd myself, right? But really, ask yourself that question. Is football overly specialized? Think about how specialized football is. And when I say specialized, in basketball, you play offense, you play defense, you switch positions all the time. It's the least specialized sport I can think of or that I have any knowledge of. I don't know much about international football or soccer. Like, I couldn't tell you much about that. But if that's more versatile, let me know. Same thing with hockey, right? But the most versatile sport I could think of is definitely basketball. Because you can be positionless on both sides of the floor in basketball, be asked to do a bunch of stuff. It's a very despecialized sport because in football, you have one job, your position, and you do the one thing on offense, right? In basketball, you could do a number of things, right? Your position doesn't necessarily dictate what you do. Same thing can be said with baseball, even though it's a little bit more specialized in baseball because you have the specific positions, right? First base, second base, shortstop, left field, center field, pitcher, all that. But you are expected to contribute on offense in baseball and on defense in baseball. The most specialized position in baseball is like pitcher, and we're seeing guys like Shohei be able to hit on both sides of the field as well, which is just spectacular, and that's what you aim for Travis to be. But when you get to football, right, and we see how despecialized some of the other sports are, you get to football, and it's like not only do you only play on one side of the field, but also you do one thing on that one side of the field. Now, there's not no reason for specialization, right? Specialization has allowed the scouting to get super specific, right? It's why the body types that you see for an offensive lineman are drastically different from what you would see from a defensive lineman, right? So there are some benefits to the game being as specialized as it is. But one of the things, also, football, very physically demanding, obviously, part of the reason it needs to be specialized, but it wasn't always this way, and it hasn't always been done this way. And there have been players who've been able to play on both sides of the field in football in, way back times. So I don't think it's crazy to think that Travis can do both sides. And I do think that we have specialized the game so much that we've locked ourselves out of thinking like something like this is possible. But I think it absolutely is. The ideal of somebody playing offense and defense is not crazy in other sports. It's just crazy in football because we have specialized football to be like this. It's more of a, I don't think anybody's really tried it versus I don't think it's really possible. How would you work this in with Travis? What would the plan be to put in Travis Hunter? I think year one, he primarily plays offense if he's on the Cleveland Browns. The Browns have made no mistake about viewing him as an offensive player. He wants to play offense as well, right? He's mentioned how he would like to be a wide receiver if he could only pick one position. And I get why he would want that. One, obviously more money if you could do that. But look how good he is naturally at wide receiver. If he spent just a little bit more time playing wide receiver, all of the, like, his routes would be better. His routes aren't even terrible right now. And honestly, he's a good enough athlete, good enough at all the other stuff that he could probably get open in the NFL right now. So I can see him playing a bunch of snaps on offense, getting about 200 snaps on defense, and you give him 1,000 snaps to start his NFL career. In the 200 snaps on defense, he would come in on 3rd and long situations and special packages where you want to have a bunch of defensive backs out there. You would put Travis Hunter out there. It wouldn't be gimmicky, but you would basically use him similar to how you use somebody like Cam Mitchell, where Cam doesn't really play a ton, but he does get in on a lot of snaps. So about 12 snaps defensively, primarily playing on the offensive side of the ball. See where that takes you, get a baseline. And then after you get a baseline, see how he's feeling physically, if he wants to commit to one position or the other. If he wants to play both positions, and I think you can play him primarily at wide receiver, give him about 900 snaps on offense, and then give him about 300 snaps on defense and treat him like a special package defensive back, somebody who comes in nickel and dime situations, right? Specialized 3rd and long situations, or if somebody is killing you, right? Let's say Malik Neighbors is cooking you. You need to throw somebody else at him. You can bring Travis Hunter in, let him play a little bit more snaps this game on defense, and have him follow somebody like a Malik Neighbors. Or if you're going up against Cincinnati and they got more defensive wide receivers than you can handle on that side, you can say, hey, this week we're going to play Travis a little bit less offensively, but we're going to play him way more defensively. Or we're just going to give Travis a ton of snaps. I think that is all on the table. I think it is possible to think outside the box with Travis Hunter, and I don't think it's a situation of can he do it? It's a situation of has anybody even tried? And I think that's the answer. Nobody's really tried to do what Travis Hunter is trying to do in the NFL. And I think Travis Hunter is talented enough to be able to be a bit of a maverick at the position, right? Like nobody thought Shohei could do what Shohei's doing until Shohei started doing it. Travis Hunter's the same thing. I think he is a unique talent, and you need to let the unicorn be a unicorn. And I think there is a great argument for taking Travis Hunter at 2. Y'all let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.